Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tangmen based on novel. So let's start. Within a few days, large numbers of reinforcements arrived in batches. The first to arrive were the Soul Masters from the three empires. When they learned that the Soul Beast army had retreated, they still remained in the city for a time. Suddenly, the entire city became extremely crowded. As Shrek Academy had suffered huge losses this time, they didn't offer some of the rewards that they had obtained during this war to these Soul Masters that came. They weren't being petty. They just needed a lot of resources in order to rebuild the city. However, these Soul Masters definitely didn't come for nothing. Shrek Academy took this opportunity to share a very important research topic with them. Spirits. All information relating to spirits, including Shrek Academy's current research progress, and even Huo Yuhao's temporary agreement with the Beast God, was disseminated to all the Soul Masters that arrived. The Soul Masters from the Heavenly Soul, Star Luo, and Do Ling empires found out for the first time that there was something that could replace Soul Rings. Furthermore, this thing was even stronger than Soul Rings. Shrek Academy deliberately exaggerated the effect of spirits. Although Shrek Academy didn't have an example to prove their words, Huo Yuhao did reveal the Snow Lady during the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. Many of the Soul Masters, who were here to reinforce Shrek, competed in that tournament, and were even saved from the Sun Moon Empire by Huo Yuhao. They naturally knew about the magical Snow Lady, especially when Huo Yuhao defeated the 7-ringed evil Soul Master Jiu Long, even though he only had 5 rings back then. Wasn't it because of the combined strength of the Snow and Ice Empresses? This was all attributed to the strength of a spirit. Suddenly, the word spirit became very popular across the entire continent. There was a new term in the world of Soul Masters. The only pity was that Shrek Academy didn't publicly announce the incantations needed to fuse with a spirit. They only mentioned that Shrek City would be designated as a pilot site for the conversion of spirits, and it would serve all Soul Masters. At the same time, Shrek Academy also gathered Soul Masters that had reached bottlenecks in their cultivation among all the Soul Masters that arrived in Shrek City. There wasn't any requirement, but there were only 100 available slots. The chosen 100 participants didn't need to pay for anything, but there wasn't any guarantee that the fusion of spirits would be successful. In addition, there was some element of risk involved. There was always bound to be risk involved. Among the thousands of Soul Masters that came, there were many who had reached bottlenecks in their cultivation. Eventually, 56 people signed up for this experiment that was risky, yet potentially groundbreaking. The remaining 44 slots were filled by Shrek Academy. Among these 100 Soul Masters, the weakest had a 3-ringed cultivation, while the strongest had an 8-ringed cultivation. Most tiers of Soul Masters were included in this experiment. These volunteers temporarily remained in Shrek City to wait for news from Huo Yuhao. Shrek Academy once again faced the entire world of Soul Masters on the Doluo continent with an unselfish attitude. Of course, this was where they were clever. If their research succeeded, the existence of spirits would be spread by word of mouth. This was also what Shrek Academy was trying to achieve. The benefit of spirits was the future developments it would be able to support. It was only through letting all Soul Masters realize how good spirits were that would be it possible for everyone to stop hunting and killing soul beasts. In exchange, humans and soul beasts could undergo a different form of fusion. This might also be the key to removing the hatred and conflict between Soul Masters and soul beasts. Shrek Academy was arranging everything in full swing. As the battle ended, Huo Yuhao was also brought to the slaughtering grounds in the Great Star Do Forest by the Beast God. Di Qian retracted his wings as he entered the Great Star Do Forest. His body also quickly shrank in size. Very soon, he looked like a human once more. A streak of black light was released from his body and encircled Huo Yuhao, which helped him to fly. The two of them flew towards the slaughtering grounds together. They looked like brothers right now, instead of a human and a soul beast. There were millions of soul beasts living in the Great Star Do Forest. However, Di Qian only led those with fighting strength out for the battle. However, his army had still comprised most of the fighting soul beasts in the forest. The losses they had incurred had greatly hurt the vitality of the Great Star Do Forest. Huo Yuhao finally arrived at the slaughtering grounds. Di Qian led Huo Yuhao past the thick canopy and slowly drifted down. Huo Yuhao was immersed in his thoughts earlier. However, he was jolted awake when the scenery around him suddenly changed. Following this, he was surprised when he looked around. The slaughtering grounds in the Great Star Doe Forest was recognized as one of the most terrifying places in the entire continent. No soul master dared to venture into this area. In other words, it was like a forbidden ground for humans. Huo Yuhao had always wondered what it was like in the slaughtering grounds of the Great Star Doe Forest. When he was younger, he had always imagined there to be all types of ferocious beasts here. However, what was it like in front of him now? He first saw a lake. Although it wasn't very huge, considering that he could see the opposite side of it, it felt like the sea god's lake. The surface of the lake was extremely smooth, and the dim green water resembled the most beautiful piece of natural jade. It flashed with green lights that were filled with life. Around the lake were ancient trees that reached into the clouds. There was a slight layer of mist above the lake, and the moist air swept over to them by a light breeze, carrying the fragrance of plants along with it. There was a strong aura of life here. The life energy here was extremely prosperous, several times stronger here than in the outside world. There were also many natural elements, and they were even concentrated, not inferior to the ice-fire yin-yang well that he had been to before. This place was like the source of all life. It was like all life in the Great Star Doe Forest was nurtured by this place. The principles of heaven and earth seemed to fill this place, and even the slightest sound threatened to destroy the peace and beauty of this place. Was this really the slaughtering grounds? To Huo Yuhao, this place was more like a paradise for all living creatures. The black air around him disappeared, and Di Qian stood quietly beside Huo Yuhao. Do you sense it? Isn't it beautiful? Huo Yuhao replied without any hesitation, it's too beautiful. This is like a mortal paradise. It seems like this is where the goddess of nature lives. Di Qian said, yes, this is a place that nurtures life. This lake that you are seeing contains the holiest water of life in the Great Star Doe Forest. This lake has existed for more than 1,000,000 years. This is the lake that nurtures all life in the Great Star Doe Forest. It's a miracle on its own. It gave the forest its own ecological balance over 1,000,000 years. Initially, he stopped when he reached that part. He revealed a sense of loss in his eyes, as well as an awed look. Huo Yuhao didn't look at him. He was completely astonished by the beauty of the scenery that was in front of him. The water of life. Yes. That was only this name that could express the beauty of it. I didn't expect this. Who would have thought that the core region of the slaughtering grounds was actually so beautiful? Di Qian said with a sense of loss, this is the work of nature. It's the source of life that nature offered to this world. I hope that everything you said today is true. Huo Yuhao nodded, turned to Di Qian and said, soul beasts are a part of this world. Without soul beasts, there naturally wouldn't be soul masters. I'm afraid such a beautiful place wouldn't exist, either. Don't worry, I'll do my best. You should know that I'm wagering my life. Just like soul beasts, humans only have one life. At this moment, a furious roar sounded, and a dark golden figure flashed to their side in an instant. Why, Di Qian, why? This figure had adopted the human form of a muscular man. He was more than 2 meters tall, and his muscles were extremely well developed. When he saw Huo Yuhao beside Di Qian, he lifted his hand, and terrifying, sharp, dark golden blades extended out. He clawed towards Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao stood in place without moving. He knew how insignificant he was here. Di Qian furrowed his brow. Bear Lord, don't cause trouble. As he lifted his right hand, a black barrier appeared in front of Huo Yuhao. As a piercing scratching sound resonated, the Bear Lord's attack was blocked. This muscular man was the human form of the Bear Lord. The Bear Lord glared furiously at Di Qian and said, Di Qian, do you know how many of our brothers and sisters were killed? How many of our compatriots are dead? Those despicable humans were about to fall to us. Why did you give the order to retreat? Why? Di Qian's eyes suddenly brightened. He exuded a threatening might from his bright golden eyes. The sovereign-like suppression that came from him materialized into a layer of golden light that trapped the Bear Lord. The Bear Lord went silent. He was astonished. He unleashed a layer of his own dark golden light, as he tried to resist Di Qian's suppression. Remember, I'll have your palm for breakfast if you dare to talk to me in that tone again, Di Qian said very slowly. The Bear Lord's arrogance had evidently been restrained, and he lowered his head. I'm sorry, Di Qian. It's just that too many of us were killed. Di Qian also retracted his suppression. I know that. Do you really think I'm not heartbroken? This time, the humans' abilities were beyond my expectations. Furthermore, they had reinforcements. Have you even thought about how the three empires would react if we destroyed Shrek City at all costs? We've already been drained. If we continued, we'd have faced a catastrophe. The Bear Lord was stunned. His intelligence was much weaker than his offensive strength. He was immediately stunned by Di Qian's words. A few projections flashed past, and a few other soul beasts appeared in front of Di Qian. They were Bai Ji the Emerald Swan, the Myriad Demon King, and the Scarlet King. Huo Yuhao stood to one side as he took in the scene before him in awe. 5 of the 10 great savage beasts, feared by all soul masters, were present. The beast god himself, who was ranked first among the 10 great savage beasts, was here. Including the Ice Sky Snow Lady inside him, who was ranked third, and the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion, 7 of the 10 great savage beasts were present. It was an unprecedented gathering. The terror in his heart disappeared. He became unusually calm. While an experience like this was extremely dangerous, how could it not be exciting, too? The Myriad Demon King and the Scarlet King both had ugly expressions on their faces. Bai Ji's head was lowered, and her face was pale. Sadness filled her beautiful eyes. "Take a seat," said Di Qian plainly. The other 4 savage beasts looked at him. Upon hearing his words, they all sat down in front of him. Di Qian turned his head to look at Huo Yuhao and said, "You may sit, too. Repeat what you told me. Release the Snow Empress, too." "Okay," agreed Huo Yuhao, nodding. He sat down where he was, unleashed his Eye of Destiny, and released the Snow Empress. He repeated the words he had said to convince Di Qian, including the conversation he had had with him. War will only lead to destruction. Only by creating something of greater value can we resolve the problem at its root. When she heard Huo Yuhao's words, Bai Ji the Emerald Swan's gaze became more focused. The Myriad Demon King appeared to be in deep thought. The Scarlet King and the Bear Lord, however, only understood a bit of it. The Scarlet King would furrow his brows occasionally, while the Bear Lord would look at Huo Yuhao fiercely. He seemed to be on the verge of attacking him at any moment. Huo Yuhao remained fearless as he spoke. Di Qian said, "You heard what he said. If what he says can be achieved, the situation of the entire continent will change." The Emperor Beast offered herself up for him, and hence, he inherited the Emperor Beast's fortune. In other words, if he dies, the fortune of Stardo will end. Upon hearing Di Qian's last sentence, the Scarlet King and the Beast Lord appeared to have understood. The most obvious indicator of their comprehension was the Bear Lord looking at Huo Yuhao differently. His gaze became much less severe. No matter how powerful he was, he would not risk his home. Bai Ji looked at Huo Yuhao. At such a close distance, her emerald green eyes were moving. "What happened between you and the Emperor Beast? Why would the Emperor Beast offer herself up for you? Can you tell us about how you two met?" Huo Yuhao paused for a while, and a look of pain flashed across his eyes. In the past few days, to keep calm, he had tried not to think so much. He did not want to remind himself of Chio's death. Now, when this Emerald Swan asked him, he could not help but think about it. The 5 savage beasts looked at him. Undoubtedly, the other 4 savage beasts wanted to know the response to Bai Ji's question, too. The Emperor Beast, the 3-eyed golden lion, was the highest existence in the entire Great Star Do forest. Even Di Qian would not presume to be better than her. However, none of the 5 savage beasts could understand why would she willingly offer her life for a human. Huo Yuhao took in a deep breath and said, "I met Chioa in the Great Star Do forest. At that time, I had gone to the forest to get soul rings. Elder Scarlet King, do you remember the first time we met the Emperor Beast, the 3-eyed golden lion?" A look of shock crossed the Scarlet King's face as he said, "Are you the one who wanted me to send soul beasts out in exchange for the 3-eyed golden lion? At that time, the Dao Tai Doluo came with you, right?" Huo Yuhao nodded and said, "That's right. That time, Elder Xian brought Donga and me into the Great Star Do forest. Coincidentally, we met the 3-eyed golden lion there. Elder Xian captured her, and my forehead touched hers. A peculiar change happened between us. Our brains received each other's memories. That was when my Eye of Destiny was activated, which greatly increased my spiritual type abilities. After I left the Great Star Do forest, the impact of this incident on me became more severe. While the memories of the 3-eyed golden lion were in my mind, her memories were way too pure. They were just memories of her cultivating in the forest, and there weren't many changes. Hence, I did not take a closer look at them. However, unlike me, she told me that that contact made her see how exciting the human world was. So she chose to take a human form and enter our human world. When they heard him say this, the faces of the 5 savage beasts turned ugly, especially that of the Scarlet King. For a long period of time, he was in charge of looking after the Emperor Beast. However, none of them knew that the Emperor Beast had left. Huo Yuhao continued, when she entered the human world, she followed my memories and transformed into the most beautiful person in my mind. Then, she entered my life. He started to talk about the first time he had met Wang Chua, as well as the ups and downs of his relationship with Donga. This time, he recounted his tale very carefully. Unknowingly, he became completely engrossed in his own memories. Chua and Donga flashed past in his mind. All of his memories were crystal clear. After the battle, the 5 savage beasts were angry and tired. However, as Huo Yuhao told them his story, they all calmed down. Even the ferocious bear lord gradually became engrossed in the story of Huo Yuhao, Wang Donga, and Wang Chua. Huo Yuhao told his story passionately. At that moment, he bared his heart. When he talked about how Wang Donga chose suicide to save him in the yin-yang love-querying valley, which caused her to fall into a coma, the Emerald Swan could not help but exclaim as if she had personally experienced it. When he told them about how he had burned his spiritual sea to save Chua, and how he was eventually revived by Chua's sacrifice, the 5 savage beasts were all dumbstruck. Of the 5 savage beasts, even the weakest one, the Scarlet King, had lived on this world for 260,000 years. Naturally, they could tell that Huo Yuhao's story was completely true. His spiritual power made this tragic love story feel even more real for them. When they first heard that the 3-eyed golden lion had sacrificed herself for a human, the 5 savage beasts all thought that she had been tricked. None of them had expected such a complex process. Was there deception in this process? All there was in this story was love, something which soul beasts found hard to fathom. Tears fell from Bai Ji's eyes. The Scarlet King's brows were furrowed. The myriad demon king appeared lost in thought, and the bear lord's face brimmed with righteous anger. In the eyes of the beast god, Di Qian, there was nothing but dejection. Despite their different expressions, they were all deeply engrossed in his tale. Chua, Huo Yuhao pursed his lips tightly, but they could not help but twitch. No matter what, Donga was still alive, and he could still think of her. However, Chua was gone forever. Not even her corpse was left. A leaf, which was about as big as 2 palms, was delivered to him. On the leaf, one could see a glistening puddle of the water of life. Huo Yuhao turned his head. What he saw was Bai Ji's tear-streaked face. Thank you. After he received the water of life, Huo Yuhao slowly drank it. A thick life energy filled his body, but it could not take away his pain. Di Qian sighed softly. His eyes were sorrowful. I never expected the Emperor Beast to die like this. Bai Ji lowered her head and said, I don't know why, but I think her choice was right. Even though she only had a short period of time, she experienced the most intense emotions. The Bear Lord snorted and said, humans are complicated. Why don't they just snatch someone to mate with? The myriad demon king's mouth twitched, and he said, all you know is how to mate. Human emotions are far more complex. The Bear Lord glared at him and said, so what if I mate? Mating is natural. If I don't mate, how can I ensure the continuity of my line and the entire Great Star Doe forest? The myriad demon king snorted. However, he could not risk offending him, and so, he said nothing more. The Scarlet King kept quiet. Compared to the other 4 savage beasts, his position was much lower. Di Qian said, the Emperor Beast is dead. We can't save her now. However, what do you think of this matter about spirits? The myriad demon king said, it's believable. At least, we have the example of the Snow Lady. However, will they lose their consciousness after they had been transformed into spirits? Isn't this the same as dying? Boy, how confident are you that we soul beasts can maintain our consciousness even after we have been turned into spirits? Huo Yuhao said, I am about 70% sure. The Snow Empress situation was unique. When her powerful energy exploded, I would have been dead if not for my otherworldly teacher, who burned his own divine sense. In a normal spirit fusion between a soul beast and a human, this problem will not occur. Hence, I'm quite confident of success. He was not boasting. The Snow Empress was not the only spirit in his body. The skyworm ice dream existed, too. He was fully conscious, and right now, he was cursing the 5 savage beasts furiously from inside his spiritual sea. However, Brother Skydream dared not show himself now. If he did, Huo Yuhao would be in serious trouble. Bai Ji said, I feel that we can give it a shot. After this battle, many of us have been severely injured, beyond curing. All they can do is to wait for death. I've already ordered the emerald swans to gather them together and treat them. However, for many of them, they are inches away from death. They are the best candidate for this spirit experimentation. Di Qian nodded and said, all right, go ahead. Huo Yuhao, may you succeed. Huo Yuhao wiped the tears from his face and nodded. He could sense the chill in Di Qian's voice, and he understood the consequences of failure. However, this was the best possible time, for both humans and soul beasts. His spiritual power had increased by a lot, and he was confident. Elder Bai Ji, before the process of spirit transformation begins, may I trouble you to convince the soul beasts that will be taking part in this ceremony. They are injured because of humans, and it's likely that they are filled with hate for us humans. For spirit transformation to work, both parties need to be willing. If not, if either party is unwilling to do so, failure will ensue. You need to assure them so that there can be a possibility of success. At the same time, I have one suggestion. Other than asking the soul beasts, which have been severely injured in the war, can we ask soul beasts who are nearing the end of their lives, but did not participate in the war? Soul beasts are straightforward, and I fear they may not let go of their hatred so easily. On the other hand, for soul beasts who are naturally near death, I feel that they will be calmer. This is an experiment, and hence, we need to consider various factors. Bai Ji looked at Di Qian. Di Qian nodded and said, yes, it's fine. Do as he says. Scarlet King, send word to Shrek to bring their participants in this experiment to the edge of the Great Star Doe Forest. The Bear Lord's mouth twitched as he asked, will they dare to come? Huo Yuhao looked at him seriously and said, all cooperation is built on the sincerity of both sides. This beast wave brought death and destruction to both sides. If we can't let go of this hatred, there's no future for either of us. Di Qian said coldly, he's right. When you head back, rein in all your subordinates. This matter concerns the future of Star Doe. If there are any slip-up, don't blame me for being unforgiving. While I am still 10,000 years away from my 9th metamorphosis, don't think you can do what you want and get away with it. Just try me. As he said that, he looked intently at the Bear Lord. Despite the Bear Lord's strength, he did not dare to lift his head. In the Great Star Doe Forest, other than Di Qian, the strongest being was the leader of the dark golden terraclaw bears. Right now, Di Qian was telling him not to act rashly. The Myriad Demon King looked at the Bear Lord from the corner of his eyes. He evidently did not respect him. In terms of fighting strength, he was weaker than the Bear Lord. However, he never once viewed him as a worthy foe. What use was a fellow with all brawn and no brain? Even if Di Qian died in his next metamorphosis, the Great Star Doe Forest would not be controlled by the Bear Lord. The Myriad Demon King, Bai Ji, and the Scarlet King had all already agreed to this. Faced with Di Qian's pressure, the Bear Lord could only lower his head. However, there was clear resentment in his eyes. Di Qian turned to Huo Yuhao and said, rest next to the water of life. The rest of you can return to your territories. Bai Ji, start the preparations. Yes, Bai Ji agreed quickly. The 4 savage beasts all left. Di Qian looked at Huo Yuhao, and then, as if his entire body was weightless, floated toward the center of the lake made from the water of life. What shocked Huo Yuhao was that the moment his body reached the center of the lake, his body turned fainter and fainter, until it finally disappeared. Huo Yuhao crossed his legs and sat down by the lakeside. He retrieved some food from his storage-type soul tool, and began to eat as images flashed by in his mind, one after another. His emotions wouldn't calm down for a very long time. He didn't know whether he could return after entering the Great Star Doe Forest this time, but there were some things he couldn't leave behind. The thing he wanted to do most right now was visit the Clear Sky sect and see Donga. His eyes became gentle and tender when he thought about Donga, but the thoughts in his heart became increasingly determined and resolute. He couldn't stay here forever. Him being imprisoned here indefinitely was no different from death. But he couldn't leave now. He had to complete his experiments with spirits and resolve the conflict between Shrek City and the Great Star Doe Forest before he could leave. After that happened, he could leave with no worries at all. He had thought about many things on the road back, and had made a plan for his future. Huo Yuhao was clear that some people from the academy had definitely seen his army of undead. That was an army of 100,000 undead. It was impossible that nobody saw it. Perhaps nobody was thinking about that for now, but what about when everyone calmed down? His buddies from the Tang sect would know what was going on, and the academy could guess as well. Summoning undead was an ability that belonged to evil soul masters. He had made that decision with no second thoughts, because he had thought it was the right thing to do, but he also understood that summoning an army of undead as large as that meant that he could no longer hide his secret of having a third martial soul, which held his necromancy. He wanted to leave some things behind for Shrek Academy and the Tang sect before he left. Afterwards, he had so many other things to do. He wanted to look for Donga, and there was something else he had always wanted to do. His emotions and his state of mind were unstable, but his formidable spiritual power allowed him to plan carefully and rationally. He had his own plans on how he would leave this place, and just like he had said to the 5 savage beasts, there were only eternal benefits in this world. Under the pretext of having sufficient benefits, leaving this place wasn't impossible. Huo Yuhao sat down with his legs crossed, and began channeling his soul power to aid his recovery. He had faced down 5 great savage beasts, and the pressure that he had to take from Di Qian above Shrek City before this had exhausted much of his energy. Even his body was a little hurt, but his formidable life energy meant these wounds didn't cause him any real damage. Soul power circulated in his body as a rose gold vertical eye gradually emerged behind his back. Light that resembled patterns of the sun shimmered around this vertical eye, and everything seemed very peculiar, as gentle spiritual undulations expanded outward from Huo Yuhao's body. The water of life not too far from him rippled faintly, because of the spiritual undulations coming from his body. Huo Yuhao could feel that the strength from his life gold was very greedy, and it wanted to absorb the water of life's life energy, but he forcibly suppressed it. Of course, he wanted to boost his own life energy, but this water of life was part of the Great Star Do Forest's core, and it contained immense life energy, far larger in volume than his life guardian blade and his life gold. If he dared to absorb the water of life's life energy at a time like this, he would be shaking the Great Star Do Forest at its very roots. Di Qian would never let him get away with that if he did so. After Huo Yuhao had left the evil demon forest, he had hurriedly absorbed his 7th soul ring and immediately traveled to the Heavenly Soul Empire. He was smart enough not to inform the body sect directly. Instead, he went to look for the Heavenly Soul Empire's royalty, Princess Wei Na, and returned to Shrek City as soon as possible after passing that information to her. He had used his full strength to unleash his necromantic spell, and summoned his army of undead afterwards. Only now did he take the time to finally stop and catch his breath. At the same time, he felt the changes in his body after he became a soul sage. Huo Yuhao felt as if he were weak, like a lamb to the slaughter, when he was up against someone like Di Qian, who was stronger than even ultimate Doluo. But he was calm now, and focused on sensing the transformations in his body. Only now could he see what had actually happened to him. The soul power flowing through his body had become a gentle purplish gold color. He understood that his soul power hadn't evolved by itself. Instead, his soul power had changed qualitatively after Chiwa had offered herself to him. At the same time, Huo Yuhao could clearly feel that after he fused with Chiwa's strength after her sacrifice, his physique had become many times stronger than before, especially in terms of strength. His strength had grown exponentially. Chiwa was the 3-eyed golden lion, and she was thick with blood descended from the golden dragon. Otherwise, she couldn't have pretended that she possessed a golden dragon as her martial soul. Right now, her golden dragon's strength had merged completely with Huo Yuhao's soul power, and had become part of him. Compared to that, his soul power's evolution was secondary, and the changes to his body had undoubtedly built a stable foundation for Huo Yuhao's future progress. Soul power wasn't the only thing restraining soul masters after they became soul Doluo. Their bodies were limiting factors, as well. Overly immense soul power demanded more and more from a soul master's body. Therefore, many soul Doluo repressed their soul power growth rate, while they used all sorts of methods to train their physiques, and only when their bodies attained higher levels of strength did they dare to try and raise their soul power to another level. Once soul masters became title Doluo, they would be faced with such a situation at almost every rank of soul power. This also meant that towards the final stages of a soul master's progress, a soul master's body became one of the most important factors that limited their development. Huo Yuhao possessed immense life energy bestowed upon him by his life gold. That, in addition to the strength of the golden dragon that Wang Qiu'er had offered him, meant he wouldn't have to be concerned about his body, at least before he became a transcendent Doluo. There was no need to mention his spiritual powers' qualitative changes. He had relied on his fusion with Wang Chua and even killed a 100,000-year evil eye tyrant. Even though his element's crushing superiority had determined the outcome of battle, Huo Yuhao's spiritual power was so frighteningly strong that it was also a substantial reason for his victory. He had absorbed 2 soul rings within a short period of time, and his strength had grown to the point where he had become one of the stronger individuals on the continent. Furthermore, he could feel that as he became stronger, he had managed to consolidate and understand much more about his personal abilities during the 3 months he had spent in closed-door cultivation. Following the passage of time, these understandings would help him grow even faster. Dorma was in a deep slumber, and Chua had offered herself to him, and both incidents broke his heart. But he was a lot stronger than others of his age, and after ultimate martial souls broke through 7 rings, their initial limitations would swiftly disappear. His talents and his potential would be gradually revealed in the future. Huo Yuhao briefly sensed the transformations in his body before he slowly entered meditation. He was swiftly recovering his physical and mental strength amid the dense life energy released by the water of life. 1 day passed before he woke up from his meditation. He opened his eyes and felt invigorated and fully energetic. He took a deep breath, and thick life energy flooded in through his nose. He felt so comfortable that he almost moaned. Huo Yuhao began to understand why Dai Qian could metamorphose 8 times and become the king of the savage beasts, with more than 800,000 years of cultivation. Perhaps the Golden Eyes Black Dragon King hadn't been alive for 800,000 years, but he resided in a place where life energy was so dense, and he still had the auspicious Emperor Beast and the Sky Dream Iceworm, among other external forces, amplifying him. It would be strange if he didn't evolve. A faint fragrance wafted from in front of him. Huo Yuhao lowered his head subconsciously, and saw several green fruits stacked up in front of him. These green fruits were spherical, and there were fine and compact golden dots on their surface. Thick aromas lingered around them, and they were very alluring. Huo Yuhao came from Shrek Academy, and he was very knowledgeable. He was momentarily astonished before he immediately identified these fruits. These were golden jade fruits, considered very rare and exotic. Golden jade fruits were natural treasures that boosted a soul master's physique and soul power. They were indeed treasures, as they were very beneficial and nutritious for soul masters. There was no doubt that Dai Qian had ordered some soul beast to send these fruits to him. Huo Yuhao wasn't courteous at all as he picked one up and gobbled it up in a few bites. The fruit wasn't very delectable, its flesh was chewy, it oozed with juice, and it wasn't sweet. Instead, it tasted bitter. But Huo Yuhao didn't dare to waste even one bit of something this good, and he even ate the fruit's outer skin. He wasn't greedy for more, and stopped after ingesting one. The effects of a golden jade fruit were very potent, and he wouldn't be able to absorb more even if he ate them. One was enough for now. After a few moments, gentle and warm currents began to spread from his gut to every corner of his body. The soul power inside his dantian became a lot more lively, and Huo Yuhao didn't have to activate it as they followed naturally and circulated along the path designated by his mysterious heaven technique. Huo Yuhao had 7 soul rings, and this golden jade fruit's boosting effects weren't that impressive. However, the fruit was very nutritious, and adding in his meditation during the past day, his mind and body were instantly raised to their peak condition. Huo Yuhao took a step out as a layer of faint golden light glowed on him. He slowly punched out with his fist, and his body instantly became brilliantly golden. Spiritual power and soul power immediately fused together, and that rose gold vertical eye naturally appeared behind him. He had simply concentrated for this punch, but Huo Yuhao discovered to his surprise that this fist's strength was comparable to the force of his fist of remembrance. Golden light radiated and didn't dissipate, as if a golden whirlpool was consuming everything within 10 meters of his fist. The seamless fusion between soul power and spiritual power produced an all-new ability. Huo Yuhao heaved a sigh of admiration inside. Just as teacher said back then, this is the feeling of a perfect sovereign's descent, where spiritual power and soul power are seamlessly integrated. This video will end here.